Welcome everybody to the DC New 52 review. I want to thank you for tuning into this episode. I am your host as always, Pauly DC, and let's get into another one of these things. Today I will discuss Red Hood and the Outlaws Vol.1. It was titled Redemption, and it was written by Scott Lobdell with art by Kenneth, Rocafort, and the first 7 issues were released between November 2011 to May of 2012. The main trio here are all well-known characters that have been around for multiple decades. First up, there is Roy Harper, a former sidekick to Green Arrow, who started off as Speedy and also went by Red Arrow, but because he goes by Arsenal here, I will focus on his creators from that time, who were Marv Wolfman and Tom Grummett, introducing him in the New Teen Titans number 99, July 1993. This time around, he's a recovering alcoholic, has both his arms, no relationship to a Lewis Carroll-inspired female villain, and rocky past with his former boss. Next up is Princess Coriander, better known as Starfire, from the planet Tamaran, created by Marv Wolfman and George Perez in DC Comics Presents number 26, October 1980. She's got one hell of a power set, and because of her being an alien, writers just give her whatever is needed whenever needed. I'm gonna be mature about her iteration here because, wow, I could devote a lot of time to the libidinous tomfoolery she gets up to, and yes, I had to bring out the thesaurus for that word. Lastly, there's Jason Todd, my favorite guy to hold the Robin mantle, hitting the scene originally in Batman number 357, March 1983 by Jerry Conway and Don Newton. His past is quite something, having been generally disliked as the second boy wonder to the Dark Knight, and was actually voted to be killed off in a 51 to 49% situation via phone-in. For real. His demise was carried out by the Joker and went down in the Death in the Family story 1988. However, as the violent and deadly Red Hood, he returned in Batman number 635, January 2005. This first volume focuses heavy on his resurrection, which means it is time to find out how our 3 outlaws become a team. Issue number 1 begins with Red Hood aboard a sinking submarine and dispatching of the smugglers inside, along with their boss, some trapjaw looking knockoff. The U-boat then blows up, sending Red Hood to what should be a second death, but instead he later finds himself naked on a beautiful island in the care of an exotic alien. And without getting too weird early, let's move on. Starfire watches Jason rest in the nude while reminiscing about sleeping with one of his former associates, but without getting weird too early, let's move on. Jason briefly wakes up, only to lose a gun after finding out his current caretaker is not human, and passes out again to dream about his days as Robin and working with Nightwing Dick Grayson, aka the guy Corey used to sleep with. Once recovered, Jay makes his way through the jungle, finding Starfire on her crashed spaceship that is just massive, and this is where introductions happen, shortly followed by her being objectified, so she retorts by giving him the clothes of both of their former partner in different contexts. Which gives Jay a flashback to when he tried to seek revenge on Batman for letting him die, and Nightwing was involved. Also, the way Corey's caressing both of their uniforms, she certainly has her vices. That night, by himself, Jason explores some alien weaponry while mentioning someone named Dakra, and when seeing Starfire on the beach, he heads down for some non-consensual kissing, even though he just wants to talk. Jeez, Corey, come on. He sure does talk though, all the way until the morning, having told her his entire past, and voila, a very unexpected duo is made. Roy can't join them yet because he's about to be executed in the fictional country of Karak, and Jason for some reason wants to save him, asking Corey if she wants to help. Issue number 2 starts with Roy Harper being brought into a prison yard so he can meet Jason in a very convincing fat suit with one of the most unconvincing priest names you've ever seen. Roy is a prisoner due to unspecified war crimes and wastes no time adding multiple murders to that as Red Hood springs him and they go on to escape a well-defended compound full of heavily armored mercs with some pistols and a bow and arrow. They do encounter some tanks after hijacking a jeep, but Starfire handles them without issue. She's definitely one of those characters you wonder just how powerful they can be and what can believably hurt them. Anyway, as the three escape the country, Jay can't help but brag to Roy that he's been hooking up with Corey. Hasn't the guy been through enough lately? Sheesh. Also, I know it would have been early for a Green Arrow cameo, but it felt strange that he would have let his former protege die here. Once back on their private island, Corey gives the guys a bikini show for the ages, including a peeping kid. Oh boy. All while Jason explains how her alien memory seems to work. Basically, hours are minutes, days are hours type of thing, so Roy then goes on to ask her if she remembers being on a team with him, Gar, Dustin, Vic, Lilith, Dick, which are all names of former Teen Titans, and this is a reference that had no answers given to it until years later. But in issue number 1, Corey does faintly recall this team. As things progress to become unnecessarily uncomfortable between these two, Jason has a meeting with the mysterious lady named Essence, whom he shares a past with regarding groups called the All-Cast and the Untitled. These are the beginnings of a huge plot, but for now the important parts here say she was banned from the All-Cast, an ancient order was broken, and she needs Jay's help. On one of the last pages, some extremist type is finding out that Starfire is on Earth, and after that, Jason finds out she's a rather free spirit, before heading to the Himalayas, more specific, the Well of the All-Cast, where he finds an old mentor named Dakara, who has been killed, and as he mentions she sent him away, a bunch of enemies arrive. Issue number 3 kicks off with a flashback to a year and a half ago before Jason's Red Hood days, and he has been brought to the 100 Acre Woods, 100 Acres of All, by Talia al Ghul, former lover to Batman and daughter of his longtime foe, Ra's al Ghul. She's the one that resurrected Jay in the longtime DC plot device called the Lazarus Pits in a twisted attempt of affection toward her jaded lover. Jason meets a former trainer of the Al Ghuls, leader of the All-Cast, Dakara, your cliched multiple millennium old being, and she agrees to train Jason due to seeing something in him. We then cut to the present with Jay having a kind of awkward yet comedic conversation with Roy before scoring some other type of air miles, and when the two arrive in Hong Kong, they are met by a rather gaudy looking Corey, followed by Roy attempting to suggest a, while in a limo. But let's be mature and just move on. Jason heads to one of his stash houses where he's immediately met by an old enemy named Susie Sue, whose design I think is rather ridiculous, plus her family name sounds Italian or French, but they're in China. Yeah, I don't know and I don't care. Especially because Jay deals with Susie and her goons in 3 seconds flat, shooting them all to death. Jason next gets a bit of a save the cat moment spoken about him by a pilot who's helping the trio out, and after Red Hood shows off some badass flight tech we'll probably never see again, he brings Corey and Roy through a hidden entrance to the Well of the All-Cast, where they find a dead Dakara who speaks to them in spirit form, now saying the Untitled broke order. But things are interrupted by reanimated all-caste monks who were also killed, and as snippet memories of them training Jason go on, they end up dying again, much to his discontent, and seen after the battle when he pays his final respects. Issue number 4 opens on an old friend of Jason's, emphasis on old, and he's called Saru, who looks like a young Xerxes from 300 minus the piercings. He watches over the Chamber of All, where an Untitled member recently entered, which apparently is not good. Our trio now need entry as well, but Saru asks of their one most precious memory as collateral. This side of Jay being seen really surprises Roy, and even more so when he and Corey enter the chamber with him, and it is seen to be a Nexus zone straight out of Alice in Wonderland. As the three navigate that place, Saru decides to peek in on their memories, starting with Corey, and her backstory is front and center in Volume 2, so for now, I'll just say that Saru's reaction comment is an apt one. She may have been a princess, but she was sold as a slave to aliens called the Citadel. Roy's ain't much better, as it features him trying to get known Gotham villain Killer Croc, looking like Sobek here, to kill him. Instead, we just hear about how Roy had a massive falling out with Oliver Queen. Back in the Chamber of All, the team appear to be on the right path, but it turns out they're on top of a gargantuan monster with a spiky mohawk mane, who clearly does not like being treaded on. Starfire tries to take point, but the monster ends up snatching her with his tongue in an attempt to eat her, but for some reason doesn't chew, swallowing her whole, thus allowing Corey to blow out of his stomach, saving the guys and killing the monster in the process. And remember, I'm being mature for this review, so that last sentence could have been much less tame. Red Hood ended up grabbing what they supposedly came for while all the excitement happened, and it's a snow globe of Colorado. Citizen Kane reference, maybe? After the three then return to Saru, Red Hood tells him to keep his memory, which involves a young Jason still in Robin uniform having a comforting night off with Alfred and Batman. Pretty good, but not as touching as the end of the Under the Red Hood movie. Issue number 5 picks up in Colorado, USA, where Jason and Roy are inside of a bar engaging in their usual banter, followed up by Jay starting a bar fight in order to get the attention of local law enforcement, in this case a single female sheriff. Once at the police station, Jason winds up arresting her instead, so he can go through town records claiming that there is maybe 12 Untitled members still around and are quite hard to find. Not this time though, because the lady cop ends up being the Untitled member, and as she tries to violate Jay, a bunch of arrows to the head from Roy saves him. Also, what's up with certain antagonists saying their weakness out loud? Really weird. Anywho, as Miss Untitled puts her face back together, Jason says it is time to get the hell out of there. Starfire was supposed to be providing overwatch and, if needed, backup, but she has her own set of problems, having been ambushed by a large bat lizard creature that's actually a genetically modified human calling himself Crux. A lot of info is divulged while the two fight, with it being said Crux lost his family due to aliens, Corey may not be the first of her kind on Earth, and Crux uses his family fortune to hunt down any others like her. Starfire is way too strong to take head on, so Crux lures her into a trap called a Tamaranian Transubstantiator. Say that 5 times fast. And it severely damages her, causing a huge burst of energy to be let off. She's then told that her powers are gone and she is little more than human now. The guys did see the blast, so Roy takes off to investigate while Red Hood puts away the guns in order to draw some special blades that will give him a chance against his nasty looking new foe. Issue number 6 continues right from the previous one. Crux's name, Simon Amal, is said, and while flying along he gets hit by a high voltage arrow thanks to Arsenal. After the sneak attack, Crux is restrained and questioned for Starfire's location. I think more than an arrow through the shoulder and some ice is needed, but whatever. Roy runs off to find Corey in bad-looking shape. Good thing this town has only one fake sheriff because a lot is happening with zero public interest. Crux then suddenly and unsurprisingly appears for round 2, snatching Arsenal by his quiver. Big mistake not making that first contact fatal because Roy gets a bit resourceful by having the whole thing explode, thus leaving him with no weapons. Huh? Things don't get much better due to the explosive also sending the 3 beneath the ice now, and if it weren't for Starfire recovering to full power at just the right convenient second, they would all have died. You couldn't have had Roy bust out a knife or something to have an intense fight before Corey's recovery. He's got Navajo roots. She gained back her abilities because of experiments done to her while in captivity, which changed her physiology, rendering Crux's trap useless. Jason has had his hands equally full as he takes on the freaky Untitled member, saying they had nothing to do with the death of the All cast. Speaking of that group, we see some memories of Jason's time with them, being pissed that Batman never avenged his death, and then he is being taught how to control his body and mind completely by Dakara, assassin yoga basically. These teachings now allow Jay to use the All Blades to draw his own blood to empower them and help him slay the Untitled member. This happens right as a mob of townfolk arrive, quickly becoming angry since all they see is some random guy having killed their sheriff. So Jay finds his partners and they get the hell out of there. Issue number 7 wraps up this book, beginning with Jason forging Crux's way into a cell in Arkham, and to throw further salt into the wound, he steals his souped-up custom spacecraft with Starfire and Arsenal. Corey is pissed that they didn't just whack him, while Roy shows his love for technology, which hasn't really been seen yet. As the 3 take off, the rest of the issue focuses on Essence, who appears in the spaceship, only seen to Jay, and saying that she spoke to the Shadow Wall, something that I don't think we ever see. It's next shown that Essence and Jay got a little extra close when they were trained by the All cast, but his feelings have clearly changed now toward her since he tries to kill her due to thinking she set up everything he's been chasing recently. Little does he know Essence is wildly powerful, first destroying the supposedly indestructible All Blades, and then going on to explain her roots actually being the daughter of Dakara, who personally exiled her from the All cast, and how they once were sort of Untitled members, with her grandfather being the leader of that clan, whose origins are as old and dark as humanity itself. My only question is, where is Vandal Savage? Corey and Roy have seen enough, joining in on helping Jay try to get rid of Essence, but even a triple team doesn't work, resulting in Roy having to repilot the ship and get his ass kicked, leaving Starfire to take her on alone and Jason to search through the ship's contents, pulling out a random weapon that gets rid of Essence. He then makes a call to the stewardess he met earlier, since we'll be seeing much more of her, and things end on his enemy from China, who he fought in Hong Kong with the established crime family in that country, waking up in, you guessed it, Gotham City. Alright. For plot, I'm not trying to be biased because of how much I like the Red Hood character, but putting him in the middle of the original creations that were the Allcast and Untitled, plus everything that came with them, was great. There were times when a title like this, among a few others, were hindered by not being able to get into that real mature content, and of course, Starfire's treatment early on was extremely questionable, while Roy just had a couple decent to good moments. I know there were lots of New 52 teams, but I feel these three could have used more characters among the age range to spice things up. Pantha, Miss Martian, Zachary Zatara, lots of others to choose from, and I think that is one thing that would have made this series just a little bit better. The dialogue has some faults obviously, but out of the opening titles Scott Lobdell worked on, this one was the best for me, followed by Teen Titans, and let's not talk about Superboy. Jason was all but 6 years out of the grave by this point and is much less tame but very charismatic, and his snarky banter with Roy was a high point, while whatever was going on with Corey was for sure a miss. Finally, for the art, I love Kenneth Rocafort's stuff. It is really mesmerizing, and I'm not going to go into it too far because every time I review a book that features it, I'll do the same thing. I have my favorite artists from this event, Greg Capullo, Tony Daniel, Nicola Scott, among others, but if you pushed me into having to pick my number one, Rocafort may be it. That will do it all for today though, and if you've watched until the end here, I want to personally thank you for that, and to please like, share, and subscribe. Please follow me on all my social media platforms, and to please join me next time for more DC New 52 content.